Hello, YouTube. I'm Michael Morgan. This is Retro Reviews. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we're going to take a step back from music and we're going to review the book Killing Kennedy, The End of Camelot by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Duggar. Before I get into the review, as always, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this video, and share this video. Okay, before I get into the review, just a quick note. Killing Kennedy, The End of Camelot does not delve into any JFK conspiracy theories. Although there are brief mentions of the Warren Commission, it does not get into any specifics of the Warren Commission's report, which of course said that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. It doesn't get into any possible second gunman on the grassy knoll, or just any of the other topics that your typical JFK conspiracy theory books and documentaries tend to deal with. But if you're a fan of history, Killing Kennedy, The End of Camelot is a fascinating book. And book is just so well written. It is just so well researched. This book itself is just slightly over 300 pages, but it is just packed full of behind the scenes views of historic events. I mean, it really makes you feel, like you were in that room, on those particular days. Of course, the book starts off with the promise of President Kennedy's inauguration address in 1961. Then it goes into details of his heroics during World War II. It gives a great behind the scenes views of what happened during the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Of course, the struggle for power, but behind the scenes in the White House is JFK's Vice President Lyndon Johnson. He had political ambitions of his own, but Bobby Kennedy, JFK's little brother, who was the Attorney General of the United States at the time, did not trust Lyndon Johnson. He tried to keep him at arm's length from what was going on. You have the behind the scenes struggle of JFK's. He was kind of really hesitant to get involved in the civil rights movement at the time during the early '60s. But his brother Bobby Kennedy was instrumental in helping steer JFK toward that. Of course, it culminates in meetings with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And two, something great that Killing Kennedy does is just really brings a contrast. It really paints a contrast between John F. Kennedy and his suspected assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. On one hand, you have John F. Kennedy, who was born into a family of wealth and privilege. Whose just very name is just you think of a political dynasty, that still carries weight with it today. But the two, and then you have Lee Harvey Oswald, who was a firm believer in communism, who had ambitions to be a great man himself. But that was the furthest thing. He was, Lee Harvey Oswald was very abusive toward his wife. He had trouble holding down jobs. But yet he still believed he was so close to becoming, being seen as a great man. And of course he turned out to be one of the most infamous people, in history. Certainly, in American history. But as I said, in the way that the book is often written is you have a certain date, and then this is what President Kennedy was doing on this date, and then this is what Lee Harvey Oswald was doing around that same time. And two, the book just sets up this. There's a tension, that is underlying the story where these two characters or these two people are on this collision course. I mean, it's just like a movie where the hero and the villain They are bound to meet. It's the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. And this is just such a gripping book, especially you get to the last 80 or so pages. I mean, I finished this book a couple of nights ago. I mean, I finished it in a big chunk. I mean, it was like 75, 80 pages. The story of when President Kennedy arrived in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, which of course is one of those dates in history where if you were alive at the time, to this day, you could probably tell someone, the exact events of what you're doing, where you're at when you heard the news. I mean, too. I mean, it is. At parts, such a heartbreaking story as well. Especially, when things are told from the perspective of the First Lady, Jacqueline Jacqueline Kennedy. Just this, the horror and the trauma that she experienced. Yeah, when when JFK was assassinated. Yeah, there's just a heartbreaking story that she was just gripping on to her husband as tight as she could. She did not want to let him go, even when they pulled up to the hospital. To try to take those measures to save JFK's life. Because deep down, she knew that she lost her husband, she lost the father of her children. Too, and two, there's a part in the book where it talks about how the Secret Service agent who was assigned to Mrs. Kennedy took his coat and put it over the president's head. Then she finally let go, and they were able to take him into the hospital. This book goes into detail about the power struggle. That happened there at Parkland Hospital, where where the Secret Service and the FBI, they were determined they were going to get President Kennedy's body back on a plane to Washington. And however, the medical examiner, he was standing his ground as well, because the law in Texas stated in the event of a homicide, an autopsy had to be performed. So it ends up the Secret Service and the FBI just they push the casket through, bowl everybody over, and they put President Kennedy on the plane to Washington. Of course, Lyndon Johnson is then sworn in as president. In the book, which if you ever want to watch a great movie about that, there's a movie called Parkland that has that's a great movie. It really highlights the power struggle that was going on at the hospital on that day in 1963. And also this goes into more the detail about when Jack Ruby he was a nightclub owner in Texas, there in Dallas. He was well known to the Dallas Police Department, and it's also believed that Jack Ruby had ties to organized crime. And then Jack Ruby takes upon himself, to take out Lee Harvey Oswald, and then Lee Harvey Oswald dies a short time later from the wound. And of course, there's a very famous picture about that. There's a video of it as well. Oswald is being transported by the police, and Jack Ruby just breaks through the crowd of journalists and he fires. And I would say overall, I mean, and this is just one of a series of books that O'Reilly and Duggar have done. There's they have a book called Killing Lincoln, Killing Patton. There's also a book called about killing Jesus, and which, I mean, this is the first book in the series that I've read, but I am definitely going to get my hands on some more of these books in this series. If you just, if you're a history buff, you get your hands on this book. If you're a fan of John F. Kennedy, you need to get your hands on this book. If you're a fan of presidential history, this book is for you. Okay, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today, and be blessed.